So when you hear the word agriculture, this is what I think about. I never realized this STEM and agriculture went together. I saw this, and I saw this. Here's the crazy part about it. I grew up on the farm. Never, ever, ever realized that STEM was a part of agriculture. And this is actually photos of the cattle that my dad, my granddad, and my uncles have at home, and our barn that they're working on repurposing. So about me. I come from a long line of cattle farmers, swine, pigs. We have chickens, and a long time ago, when I was very small, some of my uncles had tobacco. My great-great-grandfather had tobacco. So a long generation of farmers. Right now, we don't have as many, just a few cows here and there. But as you can see, my dad and my uncle, they still do quite a bit of work on the farm. Right now, we're in the process of getting the gardens ready for the summer. So hopefully we'll have a pretty decent crop. So for me, agriculture was definitely something I was born into, as you can see from the photos. One of my earliest memories in particular was helping to feed the pigs. Pigs are, I guess, my favorite farm animal. When I was small, I was very close to my great-grandfather. So growing up, in the morning after we had breakfast, we would go slop the hogs. And for people that may not know, pigs eat slops. They are basically leftover table scraps and whatever is left at the end of a meal. And so I would go down the path every morning with a 5-gallon bucket, dragging it behind me to slop the hogs. And that was my first love. And that is what got me into agriculture to start with. However, when I got a little older and I started school, I had to start going to school in the city. And of course, you know, smelling like the farm is not the greatest thing. You don't want to accidentally step into something and then you go to school and you smell like the farm. So the farm was no longer cool to me once I started going to school in the city. I was like, this is it. I'm done. No parts of the farm anymore. So I moved on with my life. I decided that I wanted to be a dentist. Around the same time, my great-grandfather decided he wanted a real retirement. He didn't want to deal with feeding the animals and mending fences and doing all of those things. So he, of course, supported my efforts. One of the stories I've often heard is, get a degree, don't come back home. There's nothing here at the farm. But like myself, my dad, my uncles, my grandfather, my grandparents, my mom, they never realized that STEM was involved in agriculture either. It was something that we all learned together, to be honest. So the summer before I got ready to go into middle school, my great-grandfather decided that we were going to take a couple walks around all the property it purchased. So every morning, we would start out either early in the morning or in the late afternoon, and we walked every acre of land that he'd ever bought, that he'd ever farmed. And so when we went walking, one of the first things he showed us was the creek. So you're thinking, what's so important about a creek? He showed me erosion. I learned about erosion in school, but I never realized it could actually happen. And he points out a tract of the land and says, this is where the creek was when I purchased the land. Look at where it's at now. And that was the first time I'd ever seen erosion. Then he talked to me about the different types of plants that were in the area, the types of grass that you should plant, what stays greener longer, what's better for cattle grazing, some of the different types of food that were available in case you got lost in the woods. So we learned about hickory nuts, and we learned about honeysuckers and honeysuckles. We learned about blackberries and all of those different things. So in the unlikely event that I got lost in the woods, I wouldn't starve to death. So he taught me about all of those things, and it still didn't click in my brain that maybe I'm actually learning science on the farm. So, I just took it as just a conversation with my great-grandfather. But that winter, he got sick. He was diagnosed with cancer, and he ended up passing away. And that changed my whole life. That time, I decided, you know what, I'm not going to be a dentist anymore. I'm going to cure cancer because I don't want anybody to have to suffer like he did. And I don't want any other child to have to go through what I'm going through right now. So I poured myself into science, and I poured myself into math. And my parents supported it 100% because they knew the passion that was behind me pursuing this career. The summer, moving forward, my parents enrolled me in a summer program at North Carolina A&T. Go Aggies, anybody in the room? But they enrolled me in this summer program. And so once I got into the summer program, it was for science and math. And I poured myself into that. And that was my first time experiencing a real laboratory with real chemicals and equipment that I had never seen in my rural but city high school. So I was extremely excited and I loved it. And I ended up going to A&T when I graduated from high school in 2008. And I majored in chemistry. Little did I know I was going to end up back in agriculture. So what happened was I started as an undergraduate researcher. And during my undergraduate research, I was given a scholarship. The scholarship said that I had to work with a certain professor to do research, and her research was on the Saharan air layer and how it impacts hurricane formation. The Saharan air layer is basically a dust storm that comes off the coast of Africa across the Atlantic Ocean, and it does something and, hurricanes form or they don't. But we wanted to know what was happening because there was a connection. It was environmental chemistry, had no clue. So I ended up being really interested in this environmental chemistry. And so I changed my major to earth and environmental sciences. And I really enjoyed it. And then I had another research opportunity. I was asked to work in an engineering lab. So the engineering lab, we were developing a water treatment for agricultural wastewater. Here goes agriculture again. It just kept creeping up on me. Like, I don't know where it comes from. So I really enjoyed that. So I'm testing the toxicity of the treatment that we're developing, and I'm seeing how it relates to the environment, how it interacts, and I really, really enjoy it. Fast forward, we get to graduation. I have no clue what I'm about to do. So I go into the office with one of my classmates, and I meet with his advisor. And his advisor says, "Have you considered going to graduate school?" And I'm like, "No, I don't think I'm going to talk my mom into paying for me to go to graduate school, and I don't have a job right now." And he says, "Well, you should consider going to graduate school, and you should major in agricultural education." The first words out of my mouth, "I do not want to be a farmer." He looks at me and he says, "Who told you agriculture was only farming? Agriculture is so much more than that. All of the research that you've been doing, all of these things that you're telling me that you're interested in, all of that is agriculture." And I'm like, "Wait, what?" And he's like, "Yeah, you can come and you can major in agricultural education and you will learn more about all those things you just told me you were interested in." And so I'm like, "Oh, well, I don't have anything to lose, might as well." So I signed up and I went and I made it through, I graduated. And during this time, not only did I learn more about agriculture education, not only did I become more endeared to agriculture, I got to travel. I was able to go to Montreal and do a study abroad. And so I really enjoyed that time. And then as I approached graduation this time, I said, well, maybe I should share my love for agriculture with other people. And so I became a science teacher. So I taught earth and environmental sciences and physical science, and I loved it. And while people maybe like me and not originally see the connection between the two, I found that my students enjoyed what we were learning a lot better when I put it into a lens of agriculture, because agriculture to me makes science tangible. Science is real when we look at it through agriculture because you can see it, you can touch it, and you can taste it. And my students loved it. And so I taught for a couple of years, but I found myself at a crossroads because I didn't know how to move forward with what I was doing. I felt that I could be doing more to educate my students, and I didn't know what I needed to do. So at that time, I decided to apply for a PhD at Virginia Tech in agricultural leadership and community education. So doing that, well, I guess, let me go back a little bit. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. But these are some of my lab experiences. All of it's agriculturally related. While I was teaching, I worked in the lab every summer. And what I learned, I took back to my classroom to teach my students. I even went on a field experience in Arizona, and I stayed in the mountains of Arizona without cell phone service, but we did have running water. We looked for bugs and insects, and we discussed climate change, and it was the most amazing thing that I think I've ever experienced. All right, so back to Virginia Tech. I applied to Virginia Tech, and I actually was accepted. And since being at Virginia Tech, I've been to Cuba to look at agriculture. I've been presented at conferences, and I've learned a great deal. And I can only say that I've been reaffirmed that agriculture is for me. It's something I love and that I'm happy to share with anybody else who's interested in hearing about it. And even those who aren't interested, I'm going to talk about it anyway. So all I can say at the end of the day is that I hope that you will consider agriculture for a career. It's more, in the words of my advisor, Dr. Antoine Austin from North Carolina A&T, agriculture is more than cows, plows, and sows.
We have time for a question. Wouldn't you like Chantel as your science teacher? Okay. Well, I'm sure she is available to take questions, and I think.
Can I ask?
Oh yes.
First of all, Chantel, wonderful story. But I'm wondering how you eventually get back to agriculture. How can we, for other people that might be in the same position you are, but not find a path back to science and and back to agriculture? How can we shorten that journey? Yours was a long journey to get back there. How could we shorten that journey for other people?
Well, to be honest, I am a proponent of career and technical education, and I think ag should be taught in all schools. And I think it should start at an early age. I was unaware of programs like 4-H and FFA when I was growing up. They weren't offered at my local public school, well, not where I was in the county, but I think if those are more visible, that we can attract students a lot easier and a lot more quickly.
Great. Yeah, I think PJ.
PJ has not a question. I have a statement. Can I take you with me?
Nope, she's ours.
She's yours? Okay. Edie would have something to say about that. You're wonderful.
Thank you.
Great representation of North Carolina A&T, and now you're a Hokie. A great story. We need to hear more of those kinds of stories, and I would like to share you and your story with others, particularly underrepresented members of a particular community. So I really want to reach out and talk with you.
Sure thing.
You're going to be my new best friend. So, by the way, I was the Teach Ag champion 2015, 2016.
Congratulations.
But I say that because teaching is, and supporting teachers is very important to all of us. And to get people interested in these careers, we have to start with the teacher. So I do thank you, ma'am.